All right, we are live for the first time ever here on the Green Mountain Defense YouTube channel. Not really polished, not really great at this whole live thing, so excuse our lateness. It said 10:30, and we're about 15 minutes shy. I was setting up. So the purpose of tonight is to interview our good friend. You guys all know TJ from the lead slinging ginger fame. I've been on his show a good bit. We've been over on Big Gunner 81, etc. As some of you do or don't know, probably most of you don't, I'm going back to school. I'm going to gun school. In this case, SDI. I'm actually doing the degree program with SDI. I went full bird. So I'll be in night school or internet school for the next 2 years. In keeping with that, I've got an assignment to interview somebody who knows a little something about ballistics. And I couldn't find anybody, so I asked TJ. Just kidding. No, got TJ Lead Slinging Ginger here, U.S. military veteran, competitive shooter, a sponsored rep shooter for, I don't know what their term is, a brand ambassador, I guess, for Right-On, Optics, et cetera, et cetera. So, TJ, why don't you give us like a down and dirty elevator speech on who you are and the firearms biz and what it is you do.
Yeah, sure thing, Kent. So, as Kent said, I am TJ, the humble lead slinging ginger. Thank you for using the word fame. That's not necessarily what I would call infamy, maybe, probably more accurate. But
our dozens and dozens of fans will see this.
Yeah, come on now. Yeah, our tens of fans. But with that, as you said, I am a military veteran. Spent 5 years active duty U.S. Army. After that, spent another 5.5 years as a defense contractor. I've got 7 deployments under my belt. I've been shooting since I got out of the well, obviously in the military I did a lot of shooting as well, but really started taking it up seriously when I got out of the military, and my love for firearms and the Second Amendment really kind of came to fruition at that point. So firearms have been a major staple in my life, and I'm forever trying to grow my knowledge and expand my influence in the industry and just in the community in general. And I like to do that through education. So not only educating myself, but educating others. So,
yeah, man. And don't let this guy's humility fool you, folks. Seriously. And this is for the benefit of an SDI course is going to be graded, etc. All kidding aside, there's a lot of people I could reach out and talk to. TJ is one of those dudes who you don't know knows anything because he doesn't feel the need to beat his own drum. And we'll be in the middle of a conversation about something, and it amazes me the places that he's taken just, a simple conversation, and you're just blown away. You're like, wow, this guy really knows a little something about everything. So, I know you won't toot your own horn, so I'll toot
jack of all trades, master of none, buddy.
Yeah, dude, no, for sure. 1 minute the guy's reloading, next minute he's shooting, next minute he's making knives, he's making t-shirts, I don't know.
Yeah, no one ever wrote it on their tombstone, I wish I had done less with life.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But with that, you did bring up Right-On Optics. I do want to plug them real quick.
Do it. You must.
So this is my budget 308. I now have the Right-On Optics 4-16 power scope on it. Haven't got it zeroed in yet. Just got it mounted up. So far, I am loving this thing. It replaced a 3-9 power scope that I had on there from another brand. Still a good scope, but it really wasn't capable to reach out to the distances that I want to take this gun. So my goals with this particular platform is 1,000 yards for under $1,000. And right now I'm holding sub quarter-inch groups at 100 yards with it. So not bad for a $400 rifle and a $500 scope.
Take me through, if you've got time, take me through your setup. What do you have there besides the Right-On?
Oh, yeah. So real simple. So this is the Ruger American Predator. It's got the 18-inch barrel. It's a medium contour, so not quite a bull match barrel and not a hunting pencil barrel as we typically see. It has, honestly, I think if I remember correctly, these are just basic Weaver rings that I have on it. Right-On does have their own rings that they use. But, in a lapse of judgment, being so excited to get a hold of this scope, I forgot to order rings with it, so I went out and grabbed some real quick. Also, I wasn't sure what height was going to be appropriate.
Right.
So I had some other rings that fit it, but it brought the scope way too high off the rifle, and it just wasn't going to work. So went out, able to went to my local gun store, grabbed a couple different rings, was able to kind of play with it and see where it would sit properly for the right distance. And eventually some medium rings fit it just fine. Working forward, I have some generic 3-port compensator on here. Truth be told, I can't remember the name. It's similar to the Michelin compensator. Okay, so I have the Michelin compensator on my competition AR, and this I really just wanted to kind of tame the jump, because when I'm shooting this thing from it doesn't have a whole lot of recoil. It's only 308, but when I'm shooting this thing from a bench, because it's so lightweight, it will jump up off the table a little bit, and I'll lose sight of I'll lose my sight picture. So being able to track and keep an eye on that target while the bullet's in flight, so I can call my own impacts. This little $36 piece of steel helps out a lot. Just a simple Caldwell bipod, Walmart special, $40. And that's really it. There's nothing else special that's been done to this gun.
Gotcha.
But like I said, I did just get the right on 4-16 power put on here, and this thing is amazing. I've really been blown away with the quality of these optics, and I did pay for this optic. They did not send it to me for free. So
yeah, cool deal. All right, so that actually dovetails pretty well into my assignment for my basic ballistics course that I'm doing here. So I'm supposed to interview somebody, separate knowledge and experience for myself, and we've got a couple of topics to cover here. So we'll just take them one by one. This isn't about my thoughts. This is about your thoughts on every individual topic. I already did a deal on what mine are. So the first one up is ask this person to explain the following. Number one, trajectory. So just a little quip. What do you see as being trajectory? What is trajectory if you're going to teach it to a student on the line or something?
Okay, so quite simply, to put it simply, trajectory is the path of the bullet. The path that the bullet travels when it exits the muzzle to its end point, right? Whether that be at a target, at 100 yards, 50 yards, doesn't matter. The angle of that barrel is always going to be slightly off of 90 degrees, right? Unless you're engaging super close, but we're not going to get into those semantics. But let's just say engaging a target at distance, 100 yards, that barrel is not at 90 degrees, or it would just go bloop. Angling it up, well, that would be a trajectory, but what we're talking about here specifically is the arc of the complete path of the bullet. So the time it leaves the muzzle to the time it impacts the target, that arc that it travels on is its trajectory.
And the idea being, obviously, that a 0 is a known distance where those 2 points intersect.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, absolutely. So since the scope sits above it and you're looking in a straight line, right? So we've got a straight line. I really wish Google Hangouts had a whiteboard type feature, but
oh my God, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, it would. So you're looking in a straight line, right? So your sight picture is direct straight line to your target, right? So if I'm looking straight, if this line goes continuously to my target and beyond, I need the point to where the bullet is going to come up, go past that, and then eventually intersect with where I'm aiming. And that is your 0. And that could be any point that you set it for. But typically, traditionally people set it for 100 yards with, a hunting type setup. Sure.
And of course you've got how many AR zeros are there? There's your, 52, there's your 25-3, there's a 33-yard and a 100-yard 0.
Yeah, so for me, my personal setting, if we're going to talk about that for a second, my personal favorite is the 5200.
Yep.
So, because I think that plays in perfectly to this discussion too. So this is more specifically for my competition rifle, or we'll just call it a mid-range rifle, right?
Yep.
Average distance that you're going to engage any target, be it, paper target for practice or lethal threat, is roughly 200 yards, 300 yards. So that's an intermediate range to me, right? Now there's plenty of people that can split hairs over what specifically intermediate range is, and I'm sure there's plenty of industry people out there that have set some sort of standard, at least in their own mind, for what the term intermediate distances is. But for me, it's whatever you would engage out in let's say military environment, right? So anything outside of 300 yards. I could even argue outside of 500 yards is long range, and from 500 yards and in is intermediate.
What's your dog think?
She just wants to know where the food is.
That is the first time I've seen your dog show up on a broadcast yet.
Well,
cool.
It's because I'm sitting down. So I've got a standing desk. So when I'm working all day, I'm standing. But since we've been doing this workout program, my legs are like jelly. So she's just being curious. She's begging. She hasn't gotten any attention today. So she's needy.
All our dogs are just like totally neglected. All three of mine are too.
Yeah.
All right, so trajectory.
I'm busy.
Item number 2, wind drift.
Oh yeah, wind drift. So wind drift affects all bullets, right? Daisy, please. You mind?
Yes.
Go on. Go lay down. Go lay down. So wind drift affects all bullets, right? So as we all know, wind blows in different directions, sometimes all directions, depending if you live in Tornado Alley. So wind drift is the distance that the bullet will travel laterally in relation to the wind. So if the wind is blowing from right to left at 5 miles or 5 nautical miles, then that bullet is going to drift off target or off center, or off of your point of aim, rather, where ideally it's going to be center. So off center, X number of inches or feet, depending on where you're shooting. Yep.
I think that's pretty cut and dry.
More specifically, just to capitalize on that, the wind drift effect, or the effect of the wind on a bullet, is actually measured by the ballistic coefficient.
Now you're in extra credit territory. We're getting there.
Yeah. So anybody that's curious about it, or gets into reloading, or even just starts getting into competitive long range shooting, or hell, even people that like to go hunting, if you look at a particular bullet, the ballistic coefficient, or BC, as it is, identified in load data books and on ammo packages and so forth, will be a certain number, and that number is a direct correlation to how much the wind affects it. Prime example is actually the reason that the 6.5 Creedmoor has gained much more popularity than the 308, especially in the long-range competitive shooting realm, and that's because it has a lower ballistic coefficient. It does have a bit of a flatter trajectory, obviously, because it's a faster-moving bullet, but the wind drift is far less of a factor for the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Very, very nice. You're gonna get me an A on this project. I just know you are.
I do what I can, man.
You know what they say: if you can't be smart yourself, have smart friends. I love it.
Those who can't do, teach. So
yes, those who can't do, teach.
Let me keep teaching you.
Yes, perfect. Wind drift. Okay. Item 3, recoil.
Oh, recoil. Okay, so this actually fits perfectly into Newton's third law of physics.
Holy shit! He brought up Newton. Oh,
yep.
boy.
So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as that bullet is fired, discharges, and all the force pushing that bullet forward, there's an equal and opposite force pushing rearward. So we obviously, those of us that live in the South call it a kick. If that gun kicks like a mule, or whatever the case might be, whatever the colloquialism is, that's essentially what you're feeling, is the recoil. So it's the gun reacting equally and oppositely to the discharge of that round.
Very nice.
I mean, we're just setting off a controlled pipe bomb inside of a metal tube that launches a piece out the end.
All you're doing is setting off an explosion with somewhere between 20 and 70,000 psi in your hands. No big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. All right, recoil. Velocity.
No, velocity is the speed of the bullet. It's the speed.
Cool. All right, now this one's meant to be the one. I wrote a whole 1,000-word paper on this already. Let's define accuracy.
Okay, so accuracy, I've heard a couple of different definitions for this, right? So, and we're going to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Let's talk about the precision side of it too, because precision and accuracy are often related, but they are two completely different things. A rifle can be precise, but the shooter and all of the various, all of the different variables that impact that firearm will determine the accuracy, right? So,
very nice.
So precision is how true and precise that firearm is. So how capable that gun is. If a rifle, most people, most firearms manufacturers, so since we're talking about more long range type features here, they aim to have, no pun intended, but they aim or strive to have their guns shoot a sub-minute of angle, accurate, degree of precision, right? So regardless, no human factors involved, that gun in and of itself is capable of shooting a 1-inch group or less at 100 yards, 2-inch group at 200 yards, 3-inch group at 300 yards, etc., etc. So the accuracy is where the human comes into play. So when I put my hands on that gun, cheek to stock weld, line up those sights, and squeeze that trigger, that gun will only be as accurate as those variables that I'm introducing into that otherwise precise platform. Right?
Yep.
So, like, prime example, that Ruger is a sub-MOA gun. It is certainly precise. And when I have a custom round developed for it, I can get 1/4-inch groups at 100 yards. So it is, me and the rifle as one unit are accurate.
Sure.
Whereas the rifle is precise.
By a predetermined measure. So interestingly enough, SDI breaks their assignments down into weeks.
Right.
Earlier in this week's assignment block, we were asked to define accuracy and to read an article where a gentleman went through accuracy and discussed all the variables that could affect accuracy.
Right,
Stock bedding, free-floating barrels, whether or not things were heat-treated correctly and whether the metallurgy was correct, what's the crown of the barrel, all these, keep in mind SDI is gunsmithing school, right? So these guys are going to get down and dirty and very minute with what things can we do to improve mechanical accuracy. And I don't know, because it hasn't been graded yet. I might have bucked the trend or I might not have, but I wrote in my paper, the number one thing that's going to affect accuracy, regardless of what we can do with a file or bedding compound or anything else, is the loose nut behind the butt pad, as Tim at Mac likes to say, or in other words, the shooter.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that aspect. I mean, it just kind of capitalizes on what I just explained. But if you think about all the attributes explained in that article that you read, the stock bedding, the crown of the barrel, all of those things are meant to enhance the performance under operation. So that gun is only going to be as accurate as the thing holding it. So barrel crown, I think that's kind of a pointless, addition or improvement, if you will. I hear that there is some improvement, but I would argue that it's negligible, right? Because if you look at all of these, world-class shooters, they've been doing it without a barrel crown for the longest time.
Sure.
You throw a compensator on it to manage the recoil and how well the human can interface with the firearm, and then, you're in business. But glass bedding, that rigidizes the firearm and makes it. So we also have to take into account there was one aspect of or variable that's introduced to the firearm platform that I didn't cover, and that's the bullet itself, right?
Oh, sure.
So
good ammunition makes a good shooter. Absolutely.
Well, good ammunition or bad ammunition, discharging that round affects the otherwise precise platform. You start getting into barrel harmonics and all that other stuff. So that is another variable that's introduced to the firearm. The firearm could be precise, right?
Right.
So in order to improve accuracy, so how well that weapon maintains its precision based on introduced variables is going to be determined by the other additions that you can make to mitigate those variables.
Sure.
Right. So let's look at an Olympic shooter, right? What they're typically shooting rimfire. Okay. I mean, there's barrel harmonics, I would argue, are not as much of a factor. Those rifles weigh like 14 pounds, right? But what are the shooters wearing? These big, heavy jackets that keep their body as equally precise and repeatable as the firearm is. They want to turn their body into that lead sled that you might use to sight the rifle in to begin with.
Yep.
Right. So we're making attachments to that entire mechanism, the shooter, firearm interface to mitigate or improve the accuracy.
For sure. No, so I put it like this. I said, I'm sure Jeff Gordon's race car would make me a better driver. I guarantee you Jeff Gordon could show up and drive the dog snot out of my car.
Right. That is an excellent analogy.
I'm sure his race car would make me a little bit of a better driver. I guarantee you he could do things in my vehicle that I could never dream of doing.
Oh, I mean, if you want to translate that into the shooting world, look at Jerry Miculek.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, the great legend of shooting himself, the king of competition. You put any gun in that guy's hands and he's going to do well with it, right?
Sure, yeah.
Trigger job or not, you give me any one of his guns and I will not be as good as he is.
No, for sure. That was my whole point was, focusing on the most important aspect, which is training and teaching people to be better shooters in general. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
So staying on the prompt, the last one, ask your interviewee to provide at least 2 examples of working through ballistics calculations in order to reach a desired result. So, any time, and can you give me 2 examples of either going through load data, going through software? How have you calculated ballistics in order to figure out wind drift, accuracy, trajectory, etc.?
So there's a couple rules of thumb, if you will, or would it be rules of thumb or a rule of thumbs? Whatever.
That just reminded me of Boondock Saints.
Of course, rule of wrist. So I have one rule of thumb, and that is never do math in public, right? Number 2, it's exponentially harder when you're talking about doing calculus in public, right? And essentially, that's what ballistic calculation is, or ballistic calculation. That's what that is. It's calculus.
You ever watch the Netflix series Shooter? And every time he makes a shot, there's like the pi symbol and tangents and like YXWZ equals 2743 over M times A squared.
Yeah, I haven't watched the show, but I know enough that that's probably what would go through my mind. Only it would be made out of crayon and only be shapes. There would be no numbers or letters. But with that being said, so we talked about the velocity, we talked about wind drift, we talked about trajectory, right?
Yep.
All 3 of those things are predictable.
Okay.
If you know your load data, right, and you know your gun, you can predict those 3 things. And that's what ballistic calculation is taking into account. Now, I do know enough about ballistic calculation to know that there are a number of algorithms that can be applied to reach the same end result. That's why some shooters prefer one program or one phone app. Like I've actually got an app on my phone that will do my ballistics drop for me and all that stuff. But all these different gadgets and gizmos that are out there that are standalone, there are variations, there are subtle variations in each algorithm that will reach the same end result. Some of them may be more accurate than others, to be perfectly honest. Go ahead.
So take me through, help me with this. And this, again, like I'm going to school, right? I'm like kneeling at the feet of people who know more than me.
Right.
I know way more handgun stuff than I do. I've never taken a shot beyond 300 some yards. That being said, what input are you giving that phone app? What are you telling it? Are you telling it relative humidity? Are you telling it?
That's all part of it. So wind speed, okay, wind speed and direction. All right. So we're going to calculate the bullet drift where possible. That does require that the ballistic coefficient data be entered into the application as well. The velocity of the round. So you have to know your velocity. I'm fortunate enough to have a buddy that has the LabRadar Doppler system. So when we go to our load development and whatnot, he brings that out. I really want to get one of those, by the way.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
It's really awesome. We could go off on a whole tangent about LabRadar, but anyway, so knowing your bullet velocity, and do not go off of what is on the box.
No, agreed. I would
Yeah,
agree with that.
nine times out of 10, there's going to be enough of a difference to where your calculation will be off at least by a couple inches. And if the name of the game is precision, then we want to know, no kidding, what our bullet does coming out of that gun. So, prime example, the load data on the round that I developed for that 308 should be coming out at like 2650, 2,650 feet per second. Out of my gun, it comes out at 2577 consistently. But that's, 100, almost 100 feet per second difference. It's a huge change in point of aim, point of impact, from there.
Sure.
And height over bore. So the height of the scope above the bore of the rifle. So we're also taking into account that straight line vision. So we need to know the standoff distance from the center line of that bore. So if you draw a line, if you can envision a chamber with a bullet loaded into it, the center line that goes up the middle of that bullet, right out the tip and through the barrel, right? That's your center line of the bore. So the height above that would be the exact center of your optic above that line. So mine's 1.75 inches.
So training community-wise, optical offset, which is why you have to aim high to make a close headshot with a rifle.
Yes, that's correct. Especially if there's an optic on it, right? Iron sights, it's not as much of a problem because the iron sights are about as close as you're going to get to the center line of that barrel with it. Short of looking through the barrel,
right?
Which is a physical impossibility, but in fantasy land where we could do that, iron sights are going to be the closest thing you can get. But with that, I do know that since those things are predictable and you can identify how that bullet performs at various distances, the trajectory is constant, right? So I'm actually going to go take a class right now it's penciled in for November. But there's a gentleman that I have an acquaintance with, awesome guy, sniper background. His name's Anthony Cerencione. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. But he comes out to my local range and competes with us every now and then. And he actually wrote a book called Long Range Precision Rifle. Cool. And I have sat down and talked to Anthony on several occasions. A lot of us have. And this guy can actually do ballistic calculation on paper.
Right.
So
well, that's what
it's pretty impressive. And it's all based off of the fact that those are known. We're talking about known values, right? The trajectory, the velocity, height over bore, all that stuff. And you can draw it out on paper because, again, we're getting into the whole calculus aspect of it. I don't know how far you went with math in school, but with calculus, there's a whole lot of arcs involved in graphs.
I wait till they started putting the letters in it.
Yeah, I quit. I quit when I had to count to 20 because they wouldn't let me take my shoes off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's all predictable and it's all known information, or at least easily discoverable information, right? Sure. So you put that stuff down on paper and you can essentially predict. If you know at least 2 points, right, then you can connect those 2 points and kind of identify exactly where that bullet's going to be and where you need to make your adjustments from there. So, and that's one of the things that he's going to be covering in the class. So it's one of the reasons I'm going to go take it so I can get more intimately familiar with how to do that stuff manually. Yeah.
So that's actually one of our, I'm referencing the textbook here. I'll even do a little screen share when I can. I hope I'm not committing some super copyright violation or something. Well, it's for purposes of school, so. Yeah, there we go. Enter the distance the bullet should travel. Divide. Yep, this is a lot of calculus. Never mind. Too many numbers on that spreadsheet. But
not enough paint by number, man.
No, dude, not nearly enough. But basically, yeah, we're going through how to calculate sectional density, then how to use sectional density to calculate ballistic coefficient, and then use ballistic coefficient to figure out full value, half value, multiple value wind calls, and to figure out trajectory. So it's an interesting topic for sure. And I just, so the prompt for the interview was 2 real world examples, and it could be anything from in your experience from, you know, doing a little Kentucky windage to hit a deer at Grandpa's farm to trying to get right.
So, I mean, then let's get practical with it. So the first example is every time I go to the range and I sight in, right?
Yep.
Or whenever I'm doing load development, I'm using the app to do ballistic calculation for where either my holdover needs to be, my hold left, right for wind value. And because I very rarely make adjustments to my scope for windage.
Right.
So I'll use the hash marks for holdovers. But for elevation, I will adjust those every time, generally speaking. Now, in a hasty situation, obviously, we're doing some holdover there as well. Yeah, so that's one example. Whenever I'm at the range and I'm trying to sight in, do load development, I'll use the Ballistic Calculator app for that. However, when I'm at a competition, I know that I'm dead on at 50 and 200 yards. At 300 yards, I need to hold over a little bit. And anything between 50 and 200, I need to hold under. Because the trajectory, we're talking about the trajectory now, that arc is going up. So at 50, it's dead on, keeps going up, and starts coming back down. It's dead on at 200. So at 100 and 150, I'm going to be a little bit high. So I need to aim a little bit low if I really want to. Now, the difference is not, if we're talking practically, at 100 or 100 and 150 yards, it's not that much of a difference to where you're not going to hit your target, right? But at 300, you're starting to hold over a little bit and so on. So there's your Kentucky windage aspect.
So extra credit time. Another concept we covered earlier this week was PBR, and I'm not talking about the stuff that comes in a can that makes me a little loopy. I'm talking about point blank range, or in the way I know it as MPBR, max point blank range, meaning what's defined point blank. So is a 4-inch spread acceptable? Is a 6-inch spread acceptable? Is a 5-inch spread acceptable? That's going to depend on your target. Your target's going to dictate that, right? Are we shooting minute of man? Are we shooting at a silhouette? Are we shooting at the vitals of a deer, etc.? Once we figure out what our vertical spread, what our acceptable vertical spread is, we can define a PBR and then shoot a 0 for that. So you can say from a distance, if I have a 5,200 0, from a distance of 0 out to about, what the hell was the number, 320 yards, I'm going to be within 3.5 to 5 inches high or low at any point.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're shooting at the high thoracic cavity of a human being and you're trying to stop him from doing you bodily harm, does it really matter? Maybe or maybe not. You may be able to hold dead center and you may be able to put around here or around down here somewhere. Whereas, if we're trying to put one right through the double lung of a deer, maybe our MPBR has to be a little bit, maybe we have to have a 3.5 to a 4 spread.
So I've always gone by the rule of pie plate, right?
Yep.
Or paper plate. So 8 to 10 inches.
Yep.
Depending on your plate manufacturer. But generally 10 inches is the rule of metric for a paper plate, right? Or an average American dinner plate. So 10 inches is good enough for minute of man and minute of deer.
Yep. Agreed. So in other words, if you hold your crosshairs dead center, don't change, no holdovers, no wind adjustments. Well, maybe wind, maybe not wind adjustments, but no holdovers up or down. You're still going to be 5 high or 5 low,
right,
out to whatever distance, which tends to be pretty acceptable. So there we go. That covers the parameters of the assignment, if you will. I just have one question because you mentioned your adjustments. I'm just gonna give you an option to plug right on one more time because you have the opportunity to. What do they have for a reticle in that 4 to 16? Do you have a BDC or what?
No. So they do have some BDC reticles, but as a rule of thumb, I personally despise those.
Okay.
And it's not the manufacturer's problem. Obviously, it's not Right-On's problem either. And for, I would say, average Joe Blow American who's going to go out and put maybe 100 rounds or 500 rounds a year through a rifle, and that's being conservative.
That's being generous.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So being generous there. They're probably not reloading, right?
No,
they're using
they're
factory
buying their
ammo.
core lock off the shelf at
Yep.
Walmart. And,
Yep. And for those, if you look at the actual specifics of those bullets, most of the values or the velocities are printed based on a 22 or 24-inch barrel. Most of our barrels aren't that, right?
Yep.
So the velocity is going to be different.
Yep.
But because we're talking about different things that are manufactured on certain standards, BDC reticles are typically manufactured off of those velocities.
Sure.
So if you're not getting those velocities, then the BDC reticle is, I guess, close enough for government work, but it's not good enough for me.
Yeah, but it's honestly, I find it funny when you go to a carbine class and you see a dude with a low power variable optic, and he's got a BDC set up and he's running an 11.5 SBR, and I'm just looking at him going, bro, you're
hurting yourself.
He's like, well, the manual told me to sight it in for 50 yards. I'm like, yeah, I'm
well, and you'll
sure.
be sighted in for 50. The question is not the accuracy of the scope. The question is the accuracy of the BDC dots
right
inside the scope, right? So that distance from 0 to your next point should be, effectively 200 yards or 100 yards, and then 300 yards, 400 yards, 600 yards. Newsflash, your bullet is probably not going to match up with those unless you're shooting factory bullets out of a rifle that is a factory length, similar to what that ammo was measured on, right?
Sure.
So Right-On does have a couple of their models with BDC reticles, but that is not their main reticles. They have MOA hash marks, so they are the same distance apart. They are 2 MOA, at least in this optic. So they are 2 MOA apart, north, south, east, and west, and going further out, every single one is 2 MOA apart.
Sure. So then you do your own math and figure out your own dope from there.
Yeah, if I have a 4.5 MOA drop at 600 yards, then I know that if I'm going to Kentucky windage it, I need to hold between the 3rd and 4th hash mark, or between the 2nd and 3rd hash mark, excuse me. And if I want to dial it in, I dial it into that MOA. But but if it's a 4 MOA drop, right? I just hold on that hash mark, that 2nd hash mark down, and I'm on. It's that simple. Sure. Right? It truly is the most accurate way to go about it. So
sure. No, I've no arguments there. I would agree with you. Like I said, my longest shot 300 some yards. So
yeah, I just recently started shooting out the 500. As soon as my membership for the range, there's a very, very nice range just north of me called Strategic Edge, and they go out to 1,250.
Yeah, that's the place you were showing me with the drone footage of the whole property and all that. Is that the one?
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm gonna tell you what, man. That Tony, the owner of that place, did it right. Like, so obviously he's got pistol bays, he's got a carbine bay that goes out to 75 yards. So they do have USPSA and 3-gun competitions there and stuff. But for their long range stuff, they've got one section that goes out to 500, and then the long range that goes all the way out to 1250. And he's got remote cameras set up, so you have video feed of your target, at those super long distances. But in order to shoot on that side of the range, you have to be a member, because you have to go through his ballistics course, and he knows what he's talking about. The guy holds a world record for the tightest shot group at like 1,500 yards or something like that. It might even be longer than that if I remember correctly, but it was off of a round that he developed.
Oh, yeah.
So he kind of knows a thing or two, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so my goal is to take that rifle out and put it through its paces at that range. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for my membership to come through, it'll it'll harvest some deer on mom and dad's property this year. So we'll be
go.
there.
There you go. Can you imagine? All right, I'm going to end this with this just because you said it and it just was funny to me. If they were going to name a round after you, what would it be called?
The Screaming Ginger, of course.
No, but it would have to be like, what would it have to be? It'd have to be like 372 Ginger or something.
No, just the Screaming Ginger, because there's no. We don't need to put a number to it. You just know what it is.
the round that steals your soul as well as
it's going to be fast, on fire, and it's going to take souls.
It's going to take souls. So I guess in opposite retrospect, mine would be the 40 shorter and fatter, the 40 S&F. Right? I mean,
the 40 super short Magnum.
It's gonna hurt when it hits you, but it might take an afternoon to get there. Oh my God!
It's the only bullet where the velocity is measured in sundial.
Yes, absolutely. Here he comes. Here he comes. Here he comes. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think we done covered my school assignment. We either got me an A or got me thrown out. So either way, that'll be cool.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help anytime I can. So.
Yeah, really appreciate you.
Of course.
I'm gonna kill the broadcast now. And you got anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, man, I appreciate you coming to me for this. As I said, I'm all about the education aspect of it. So I'm happy to help you out, and hopefully we helped out a few of your viewers at the same time. So if you guys got questions, feel free to hit Kent or myself up. We're obviously on Instagram and stuff, but YouTube, we do read the comments, despite what faux pas that may be in some circles. But we do read the comments because we're here to help out. So feel free to post your comments and give us a like and a follow. Show us some love.
Yeah, do that.
In the meantime, get your ass out to the range and do some shooting.
Absolutely. Hit TJ up at Lead Slinging Ginger on Instagram and YouTube. Check out Right On Optics. Somebody had to love my friend over there, so they're loving him.
Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, for those seeing this, I do have a discount code for Right On Optics for 50% off. T Ramsey, TRAMSEY, all one word. And that will get you 15% off at rightonoptics.com.
So say head on over there. 15 or 50?
15, 15. Let's be clear about that. Yeah, 15.
I was going to say, I'm going to Right On right now for 50 now, 15%.
But to be fair, I mean,
15 is huge.
No, even without the discount, one of the things that I really like about that company. So first of all, they're the only veteran-owned optics company. So Mill and Leo veteran-owned.
The only U.S. veteran-owned optics company. I'm sure there's a Russian veteran-owned optics company somewhere.
Well, the U.S. veterans are the only ones that matter. Based out of Arizona, they use high-quality Japanese glass in all their optics. It is some of the clearest glass you will ever look through. I promise you that. And what's even more impressive is the durability, of course, the consistency and accuracy of it. I know that I've seen it in use at that CMP.
Oh, cool.
So not civilian marksmanship program, but the other one. The ones where the guys shoot out to like 5,000 yards. Yeah. Charlie Mike Precision is the name of the company. But those guys do some awesome instruction out there as well. I hope to get out and train with them too. But I have seen them use Right On Optics before. So the consistency, the accuracy, the warranty is phenomenal. If it breaks for whatever reason, send it back to them. They will ship you out a new one immediately. So you don't have to wait like 6 weeks to get your scope fixed and get it returned. They will get you back in the woods or on the range within a week. It's pretty impressive, right?
Very cool.
So in the time it takes your scope to get there, they will immediately have one in the mail and get it back to you. So
very, very cool.
Maybe not precisely a week. We can't trust the postal service, but
I'm gonna call them up and be like, TJ done told me it was gonna be a week, and it's been 8 days.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been 7 days and 5 hours. But also the affordability. They're incredibly inexpensive. So you're getting a damn good quality piece of glass for what I like to call real American prices. So not all of us can afford to go slap a $2,000 optic on a AR-15. So
Just hiding my face because I'm kind of embarrassed by that statement.
Yeah. Some people do it, man.
No, I know. I spend way too much money on guns.
Just like people spend $2,000 on a Glock.
Hey, 1575 to be fair, and I still shoot it low right occasionally. Yeah. Anyway,
because you're a lefty, everybody else shoots at low left.
I know. They look at that little wheel on the thing and they're like, "What the hell happened?" I don't know.
Exactly.
Awesome, dude. Kent Howard, Green Mountain Fence, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. I don't know why I'm on Twitter. Donald Trump's on Twitter, so am I. Check us out. Give us a like, favorite, subscribe, and share. Thanks, everybody. Get out there, get shooting, have fun with your friends and family. If you have questions, please hit us up. If you like this, please consider subscribing. Also, go give TJ all that same love because he does awesome work over there at Let's Slinging Ginger. And if you didn't like this, tell us why, but go ahead and be respectable. Unless you're my professor at SDI, in which case, please, God, give me 100. Green Mountain Defense and Let's Slinging Ginger out.